I'm very excited about this next session on deepfakes and what to do with them, with prominent guests chiming in from the US on the day before Inauguration Day 2021. Over to moderator Hilde Sandvik, who is joined by two researchers affiliated with the Viz Media project.
Welcome back, and I'm so honored to sit here in front of a screen where I now can see both Deborah and Nick coming in. Hi to both of you.
Hello.
Good morning, I would say. Is it very early?
Yes.
It's very early.
Early enough, yeah.
I have to admit that this session is something I've been very much looking forward to because, I mean, we're sitting here now in Norway. You sit in Washington, Nick. And I have to ask you one question. Have you been outside of the doors now for, have you been sitting inside?
Embarrassingly, yes. I've been inside for days now, but I do try and go outside at least once a week. But we're trying to stay indoors this week and stay off the streets.
But both of you, we have now, I mean, what you're going to talk about is deepfakes. And it's also connected to an article you both wrote about how the different scenarios of how deepfake can actually influence elections. And tomorrow, it will be a very special day in the US. We have heard, even here. And would you say that the scenarios you had already, did it tick in? Deborah?
When you say did it kick in, I don't think we saw visibly, or certainly there wasn't a predominant deepfake that came into play in the big media. So it's hard to say that deepfakes played a big role, or it would be hard to demonstrate, you know, that they did. But certainly the election was, as everybody knows, predominated by misinformation. If anything, I think what I learned was so much damage can be done with misinformation short of deepfakes. In other words, it's not just deepfakes, it's just, I don't know what to call it.
Fake.
Ordinary media,
Ordinary fake, yeah.
Yeah. Ordinary forms of communication.
Yeah. But you are here now to present some of your work, and you will do that in a conversation with me. And I'm not sure if you have divided the time between you, but would one of you just tell shortly about the article and the research you did that led up to the article? And then we can somehow, into this discussion, more and more elaborate on the topic. Who of you will start?
Why don't I take a minute to explain the scenarios a little bit that we developed. You know, one of the key ideas behind the deepfakes work Deborah and I have been developing is two scenarios to explore and anticipate potential ethical harms that might come about as a result of the use of deepfakes. And we looked at elections as a specific context to explore and anticipate potential harms. So what we did is we very rigorously and systematically explored the abilities of deepfakes, different types of deepfakes, images, videos, the ways in which different people could use deepfakes to impact elections, so different actors, whether those be campaigns or candidates themselves, or just the broader public.
Should we just use a minute to say what a deepfake is? I mean, if people then watch and are not quite familiar with the concept, how do you define deepfake?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a deepfake is typically defined, I think, as a video or audio clip that's been synthesized using machine learning technology to appear as if an individual is doing or saying they didn't do or say. So it's sort of a complete fashion. These artificial intelligence methods or create the pixels and create the media based on what they've learned from large data sets.
So you looked into how this used in, for instance, an election can harm the election. Yeah. And what did you find? Or what kind of scenarios did you play upon?
Yeah, so we developed, how many years? I think it was 8 different scenarios. Explore the use of deepfakes in different ways.
We started off with 12 or 13 and then narrowed it down to 8. Yeah. I would say, just to refer to, I assume everyone saw the scenario developed by the students. Ours were a little bit, which I thought was very good. Ours were a little bit more detailed in sort of specifying what sort of impact they had. For example, I think that little scenario was very good at showing how a candidate for an election might be hurt. And to some extent, it showed, because it mentions turnout was diminished because of the deep fake. But we focused both on harms to the candidates as well as harms to the viewers, to people who see the deep fake and make a decision, a voting decision on the basis of that, as well as just the integrity of the voting system.
And what kind of harm were you looking into? Because I was thinking about that because I read an article today in Washington Post about the Trump era and saying that it was a battle on the truth from the beginning. And it also says now that 1/3 of the Americans still don't believe that the election was okay. So that means that you don't even need deep fakes to make people having distrust of the system. How does that relate to your thoughts and your research? Deborah.
Yeah, I mean, my take is that deepfakes are just as part of the whole equation in terms of misinformation, disinformation. And we focused on deepfakes because it is a new phenomenon, and I think by focusing on them, we were able to explore harms of deception, of the ways in which deepfakes can be used to intimidate, for instance, through pornographic material, and you saw that suggested in the video that you showed at the beginning there. We had harms relating to reputational attacks, harms related to misattribution, so making it appear as if you said something that you didn't say, and then sort of more broadly, this of undermining trust in electoral outcomes. Now, we see deepfakes used to really push the buttons on any of these harms for 2020 in the US. I would say not, but that doesn't mean that there weren't some sort of more minor forays into some of these harms. So one of the cases that I wanted to just mention is, since not everyone may be following deepfakes and US politics, there was this case a few months back, related to Hunter Biden, so Joe Biden's son. And basically, there was this dossier that was distributed, which sort of casts some aspersion on Hunter Biden, sort of suggest there was some conspiracy theory linking Hunter Biden with the Chinese Communist Party, and so on. And this document was actually spread by a fabricated identity. So it was spread by an ID with a deep fake writing it visually. And so that profile of the person spreading this false information was deep fake profile picture. So you kind of see here, the deep fake is being kind of used to hide behind, but it is sort of contributing to this larger disinformation ecosystem in order to help that disinformation kind of hide behind a fake identity. It makes it more difficult to chase who created that information, and kind of the use of these totally fabricated personas can still be used to kind of associate a political figure via their family member and via a connection out conspiracy theory.
And Deborah, one of the problems here is that it's also so hard to deceive. Do we have measures to differentiate, to see, to recognize what is deepfake?
Well, I think the technology is getting better and better, so it's getting harder and harder. I mean, early on, you could try to educate the public about where to look to detect whether something was real or not when they saw it, and that's getting less and less so as the technology gets better and better. But it's certainly one of the strategies has to do with developing either technological ways to detect or what's called, media literacy, to train the public in how to detect. But I don't know whether that's really well, we can talk about that later, whether that's the most viable strategy to cope with deepfakes. Yeah, I do want to add one other thing, and that is that one of the reasons we focused on deepfakes has to do with the fact, and this distinguishes it somewhat from other forms of misinformation, is that it's visual, and that there's something about the the power of the visual that people have relied on in determining what to trust.
Yeah.
We sort of, when we see something right before us, we think it's true. So, yeah.
But you have been, you have been into these topics for a very long time. You have written several books on the topic of ethics, computer ethics, and now the last, engineering ethics. And the production companies, or where it comes from, are we enough aware of the harmful effects of the technology? What would you say?
Well, I think I would say that we're fairly much aware of the harmful effects. I think the problem is how to control it, or how to manage it in a way that so that we get the benefits without getting these all the misinformation and the people being manipulated into believing what's not true. So yeah, it's a pretty powerful technology. The other thing that makes it difficult, I think, is that there are so many actors involved in the production of a deepfake. I mean, I think part of the ethical issues in part arise because the capability of producing deepfakes is now available to people. It's not just, you don't have to have a lot of money, you don't have to be a big organization to produce and distribute a deepfake.
But we're all familiar now with face swaps. We do this for fun. It's very easy to make a video of myself pretending to be another person. We are more aware that is happening and play with it. But you look upon the harmful effect, and you have looked into the American election. But have you seen examples on how it is used otherwhere to change outcomes of elections? Or what's the worst example you have seen?
Worst example is hard to say. I don't know. I will just tell you that in preparation for today, I was kind of reading up on the last couple months of what's been happening with deepfakes, and I read about this incident. Maybe Nick knows more about it, where someone made this has to do with Australia and China's political relationship. Someone made a deepfake that depicted an Australian soldier killing a child or something like that. and this kind of got the attention of the Australian government, and who tried to, who accused the Chinese government of doing this to stir up political unrest and so it got to be a whole thing, and it was a total fabrication. The incident had never happened. So
And
yes,
just to-
many other countries, yeah.
Nick.
And just to sort of offer a counterweight, since we're in dialogue here, I don't want us to lose sight of the idea that deepfakes aren't necessarily bad. Certainly our project focused on identifying the ethical harms that can come about, but there are examples of deepfakes being used for positive ends, even in the realm of politics. So there was one example of a politician in India during their election last year that was using a deepfake to essentially translate their campaign message in different languages to reach their constituents in their preferred language. And so I'm not sure if in the U.S. context politicians would want to use deepfakes that way. It might undermine their authenticity of their own voice in ways that they're uncomfortable with. There are new creative ways of using this media to get your message out for promotional purposes, for advertising purposes. And I think one of the things that maybe we didn't see as much of as I thought we might is more sort of guidelines around the appropriate use of deepfakes in campaigns. I mean, there was an early decision by the Biden campaign that they were just simply not going to use them, which is a position to take. But I think it also kind of misses some potential opportunity.
Before I bring in more people into this conversation, I want you to say something about if you think that media literacy have a chance. Or are we just following after, or can we actually be up to speed with the technology?
Oh, I do. I mean, I think we can definitely continue to increase media literacy. I think technical experts, journalists, educators, we can all be out there helping to raise the level of media literacy. People need to be skeptical of what they see online, and I think we're getting there. I think more and more people are aware of the capabilities. As you referred to, Hilde, people can do this with apps on their phones. I've sort of argued in the past in some of my writing that I actually think deepfakes could be for mainstream media, insofar that once the broader public is sort of media literate and aware of the potential harms from deepfakes, those people might be incentivized to go back to the mainstream media to get the credible version of events. What really happened? Is this a real video? Sort of learning to rely on mainstream quality media to put the effort in to verify and debunk these type of pieces of media that are found.
Yeah. But what about the industry, Deborah? What's your take on that? Do we need regulations, more regulations, for instance?
Well, I mean, it's yes. I think the simple answer is yes. The form that those regulations will take is kind of the harder question. I just want to say I want to add one thing about media literacy. I also think it has great potential, but I think the concern is that what it involves to some extent is developing mistrust in people, in what they see. And I think that's important. I mean, I like the idea. We often think that trust is so important, but I think you can make an argument for the value of mistrust. But mistrust also has some negative side effects. In other words, it makes it harder to trust. So yeah, I would just ask that. Yeah, I definitely think that we're seeing at least lots of pressure being put on social media platforms to do some filtering. And I think that's kind of the beginning of the movements towards more regulation of media social media in general, but that would somehow involve deep fakes.
Yeah, but because it is really, I mean, we're living in a time where reality is the new fiction. And we're also living in a time where seeing is not believing. And this article I referred to in Washington Post, it's a long article today. I think I can even say, recommend it. And it says that it's an interview there with a psychologist saying that people who do not believe what they're seeing, it's very hard to make them turn. If you first believe in conspiracy theories, then it's very hard to get you to believe something else. And deepfakes really, I mean, if there is a value of distrust, it is also touching upon the conspiracy theories on the other hand.